In this video here, I'm gonna give you a complete beginner's guide to starting up a clothing brand. All of this came from my own 8 years experience running my own clothing brand and working with thousands of other brands online. I'm gonna cover the absolute most important things that you should and shouldn't do when you're starting up a brand. So we're gonna start with the don'ts. Absolutely do not do these things under any circumstance, and do's. All of the things that you definitely should be doing for your brand. You're gonna absolutely love it. Sit back, enjoy. Here it is. Apparel Success is sponsored by my buds over at Design Crowd, and if you struggle with designs, I really recommend that you try them out. You post a project on Design Crowd, super sick designers from all over the world are going to compete for your project. You choose the winner, then you get that design plus revisions. I have literally sold thousands of these designs on my website, and I got them all made through Design Crowd. If you're interested, head over to designcrowd.com/apparel to learn about the special offer that I have for you, or just use the discount code apparel when you post a project on Design Crowd. All right, if you're starting up a clothing brand, here are all of the most important things that you should absolutely not do for your brand. Get out a notepad, get out your phone, start taking some notes. The very first thing is invest in too much inventory. Way too many clothing brands get really excited thinking that their clothing brand's gonna pop off, and they invest in like thousands of dollars worth of inventory. They don't have any proof of concept, and they end up with their first batch of inventory that they can't sell out of. They have this huge epiphany that, oh my God, the designs actually weren't that good. I should have come out with this design, and now they can't even invest in that new design because all of their money's tied up in their old inventory. So just always, when you're first getting started, invest in the minimum order quantity. Prove the concept first. Get that direct evidence that this thing's actually going to sell, and then you can always invest in more inventory after. The second thing that you should just never do is choose a really bad name for your clothing brand. A lot of clothing brands make this mistake, and I have to admit here that for my own clothing brand, as you can see, my clothing brand is called K-Bud. K-Bud is like slang here in Canada. Like, K-Bud, yeah, sure, bud. And we've done hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sales. We've become very, very successful in our little niche in Canada. But to be honest, K-Bud, the way that we spelt it, B-A-H-D, kind of has a pronunciation barrier inside of it. And if I could go back in time, I probably would have thought of a way to name my clothing brand that's still going after my niche, but that has a different name that doesn't have the pronunciation barrier in it, where when people read it, they go, K-Bud, K-Bud, and then when they get it, oh, it's K-Bud, I get it. And then it like takes that little extra second. So when you're naming your brand, make sure it doesn't have a pronunciation barrier in it. Make sure that the name is something that is really cool, but also is simple and conveys what your brand concept's all about and has the potential to travel word of mouth. The third thing that you should just never do when you're starting up a clothing brand is invest in trademarking your brand way too early. A lot of clothing brands, once again, get really excited and they put half of their whole company's budget into trademarking their logo or trademarking their name, and they haven't even sold anything yet. They haven't gotten their name out there at all, and there's basically no reason to protect your brand at this point because there's zero value inside of your brand right now at this point anyways. So what I recommend is that if you have a lot of money, go ahead and trademark, that's all great. But if you have a tight budget, you don't have to trademark right away. Do a name search online, look up, make sure that the business name's not taken, but get momentum with your brand. Try and get started, try and make a few sales, and you can trademark a little bit down the line when there's actually something to protect and when your brand has actually grown to the point where, okay, now I can file for a trademark because, you know, clearly we need to be doing that at this stage. And all that I'm saying is that you can just wait a little while longer to start making some sales for your brand. Maybe you make enough money that you can eventually trademark and it's not that much of a problem for you financially. And the biggest risk here with this, and what I'm trying to protect you from, is if you trademark your brand right at the beginning with your name, with your logo, and it's like $1,000 for you to do it, and then you know, you go to sell your brand, it doesn't really work and you want to change something. Well, now you have this trademark that you just invested in and you really didn't need to because nobody was coming after your brand anyways. Nobody was going to try and take your name anyways. And it's just one of those things that you definitely don't need to trademark as early as a lot of clothing brands think. The fourth thing that you shouldn't do is sell your clothing brand to your friends and family and treat this as proof of concept for your brand. A lot of clothing brands get some sales from their friends and family and they think, oh my God, my clothing brand's amazing. All my friends love it. My whole family loves it. But until you've been able to sell your brand to complete strangers, people who have no bias connection to you, you really don't have any true proof of concept yet. Because the real market is going to be way harsher and assess your brand completely differently than your friends and family will. So with my clothing brand, in my niche, who I'm selling to, the rural Canadian crowd, I don't even try to sell my brand to my friends and family because a lot of them just wouldn't resonate with it. They wouldn't get it. They're not a part of the little subculture that I'm trying to sell to. And if they're not for it, then I'm not going to go out of my way to try and sell to these people. I'm only going to sell to the people who are resonating with my brand. The fifth thing to please do not do this is think that you're doing a bad job if you don't have a lot of sales in the first few months with your brand. A lot of clothing brands are doing all of the right things in their first few months, and then they think that they're doing bad and they shut down everything and stop working on it because they don't have very many sales in their first 3, 4, 6 months. In this industry, it takes a lot of time to really gain the momentum for your brand, and you could have been doing all of the right things perfectly, and within a year, within 2 years, things would have really taken off because success tends to happen in a J curve. Your results are going to be really, really slow for a long time and then takes off in a J curve rather than like this really steady straight line. And sometimes a lot of clothing brands are like people when they get into fitness, they're doing everything right for 2 or 3 weeks, eating perfectly, hitting the gym. It's exactly what you need to be doing. And then they're like, well, I haven't seen the results yet, so I give up. It just might not be for me. And it's like, no, you were doing everything right. You just simply weren't doing it long enough. And the sixth thing that you should not do for your brand is invest in ads if you can't afford it. If you can't afford spending money on advertising for your brand, like Facebook ads and Instagram ads and TikTok ads, then just don't do it. There are different ways to market your brand and to get the same results. Investing money, or you can invest your time. Those are the two main resources that you have as a founder. And if you don't have the money, well, then you have the time and you have the effort, and you can put your time and your effort into your organic social media marketing strategy. And that can be just as effective as paid ads. What money allows you to do is it kind of allows you to bypass the need to work as hard on social media because you can leverage this different resource that you have, but you can get those same results working just as hard on social media. All right, now here are 6 of the most important things that you definitely should do if you're starting up a clothing brand. The first thing is build your website with Shopify. I think that Shopify is absolutely amazing, and a lot of clothing brands try and start up their brand using like WordPress and all these different websites that are so hard to build a website on. They don't have a very good back end. There's very little integrations. There's no apps that you can download to improve your shopping cart or improve all these different little things on your website and connect it with your email marketing or things like that. Shopify is actually a sick platform for scaling up a clothing brand, and I'm not being paid to promote them. I just switched to using Shopify from using Wix after about year 4 or 5, and once I got the hang of Shopify, it was absolutely amazing. So I super endorse building your website with Shopify. The second thing that you definitely should do is have a cohesive brand identity. And what I mean by this is have colors and text that are specifically for your brand concept. A lot of clothing brands start and it's just sort of this like loose brand concept that doesn't really have an identity. You really want to focus on building a truly strong brand identity and personality that has that real like punch to it, where when you show up to your website, when you show up to your social media, it has a personality. It has something about it where it feels like you're talking to that person where you know who they are, you know what they're into, you know what all their interests are, and that should be what your brand's like as well. And you can do this through the colors that you're using, through the text that you're using, through your brand name, and everything that goes into building your brand. The third thing that you can absolutely do that might be controversial is use TikTok as your main marketing strategy. You can literally just use TikTok to market your clothing brand if that's what you wanted to do these days. The algorithm on TikTok and what it's doing is so unique. It's literally never been seen on social media before. And tons of brands are growing solely by posting like 6 to 12 times a day on TikTok, only focusing on that, because if you're creating content that is truly valuable for your audience and they're enjoying it, that is basically the only criteria that TikTok needs to show it to more people. And you can quickly build up an audience on TikTok if you really hammer it and put in a lot of effort, and you can drive a ton of traffic to your website. The fourth thing that you should definitely do when you're starting up your clothing brand is DM and message influencers and celebrities to send them free clothing. I can't tell you how important this was for my own clothing brand. In the first year, I was constantly messaging different celebrities, messaging different influencers that were within my niche and offering them free clothing. Just like, hey, we're huge fans. We'd love to send you a free t-shirt. We'd love to send you a hat. And the few that do get back to you, they'll be like, yeah, sure, here's my address, send it off. And then maybe you get a picture of them wearing it. Just how valuable that can be for your brand, especially in the beginning stages, is like hard to put into words. It was huge for my own clothing brand. We got into a whole bunch of different Canadian celebrities and they're all on our website, and it's just absolutely helped us like crazy to grow our clothing brand. The fifth thing that you should do is spend a ton of time working on your brand messaging. The words that you're writing for your Instagram profile, for your TikTok profile, for that tagline at the top of your website, for your story page, all of these different touch points that your customer is going to have in terms of trying to understand what you're about, seeing the value in your brand. It's super important that you work on this, that you hone it, and that you really master it. Because a lot of brands that haven't done this, you come to their Instagram account and in their bio, you're like, I don't even know who you're for. And the way that I want you to think about this is focus on clarity. Remove any confusion as to what your brand's about and write it as concisely as possible. And what I mean by concise is use as little words as possible to convey your brand concept clearly. And the sixth thing that you should do is focus on being extremely consistent on social media for a long amount of time. There's nothing more important than this when it comes to your organic marketing strategy. If you're being kind of lazy with it, if you're showing up once a week and then taking 3 weeks off and then coming back to it for a week and then taking another week off, you're just never gonna grow. And I think that a lot of clothing brands just underestimate how much work it really takes and how consistent you have to be in order to really push the needle forward for your brand. I hope that that helps you put things into perspective with your own clothing brand if you're just starting. And if you're thinking about starting up a brand or you're already running one, you've got to check out the Apparel Success Mastermind. It's a monthly subscription where we do exclusive live streams. You get access to all of my courses. There's a community of other clothing brand owners in there. You can learn more about what's inside at apparelsuccessmastermind.com, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.